Lieutenant Alan Bryce stood in the docking bay, his boots clicking against the gleaming floor as he scanned the line of alien delegates awaiting him. Above them, the crystalline domes of Eshnora refracted the sunlight into shimmering rainbows that dappled the white walls. A group of 4 Eshnorans approached, their tall, wiry forms moving with a grace that made Alan feel clumsy. Among them was the translator assigned to him, a woman named Kirill, whose name he had practiced saying at least a dozen times before arrival. As they stepped closer, Alan noticed that the others let Kirill take the lead. Her translucent blue skin glistened faintly in the light, and her black eyes flickered to him before she bowed slightly in greeting. "Welcome to Eshnora," she said in perfect standard. "I am Kirill, your cultural liaison." Alan nodded, trying to keep his expression calm. "Thank you." Lieutenant Alan Bryce, representing the United Earth Alliance. He glanced behind her at the other 3, who remained silent. "Are they part of the liaison team?" Kirill's lips curved slightly, a movement so small he might have missed it. "They are my colleagues, but I will be your primary contact." Another delegate, a taller Eshnoran with gleaming silver quills, leaned in and spoke in a musical, unfamiliar tongue. Kirill replied in the same language, her tone measured and firm. Alan shifted uncomfortably. He was no stranger to alien environments, but Eshnora was unlike any world he had visited before. Its blend of natural beauty and advanced technology created an almost surreal atmosphere. He couldn't tell if it was the dazzling cityscape or the way Kirill kept glancing at him that made him feel so out of place. Kirill turned back to him, her voice calm and even. "Come, I will show you to the meeting chambers." They walked through the towering corridors of the Eshnoran capital, Alan trailing slightly behind as he took in the sight of glowing murals that shifted colors as he passed. The air smelled faintly of something sweet and unfamiliar, and the quiet hum of energy beneath the city's surface added to the sense of otherworldliness. Kirill led the way, her movements as fluid and precise as if she'd practiced the route 100 times. "So, you've studied Earth languages?" Alan ventured, attempting to break the silence. "Not just Earth languages," Kirill replied, glancing over her shoulder. "I've studied Earth customs, literature, and history as well. That's why I was chosen to be your liaison. The Council thought it would be easier for you to work with someone who already understands your ways." Alan chuckled softly. "I'm not sure any alien can truly understand human ways." Kirill stopped and turned to face him, her dark eyes narrowing in thought. "Perhaps. But understanding begins with curiosity, does it not?" He met her gaze, surprised by the intensity of her words. "It does. And I'd say that's true for humans as well." Kirill didn't respond right away. Instead, she resumed walking, and Alan hurried to keep up. As they approached a wide, circular chamber with intricate carvings etched into the walls, she gestured toward the center. "This is where the preliminary discussions will take place. You'll be able to present your proposals here." Alan stepped into the chamber, his eyes drawn to the intricacy of the carvings. He could make out scenes of Eshnorans working together, constructing their great crystalline cities. It was a subtle reminder of the unity they prided themselves on, a concept Alan hoped would extend to humanity as well. "What are these carvings supposed to depict?" he asked, running his hand lightly over one of the panels. Kirill followed his gaze. "They tell the story of our great migrations, our struggles to build a society that could thrive in harmony with our world." "Interesting," Alan said, stepping back to take in the larger picture. "We have similar stories on Earth. Not always harmonious, though. Conflict seems to be a recurring theme in your history," Kirill said, her tone neutral. Alan smirked. "We're a passionate bunch." Kirill studied him for a moment. Passion can lead to creativity and innovation. It can also lead to destruction. He met her gaze, curious about her perspective. "And what do Eshnorans believe leads to progress?" "Understanding," she replied without hesitation. "When we understand each other, our differences, our motivations, our fears, we can find common ground. That's how we've avoided the kind of destruction your species has experienced." Alan raised an eyebrow. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple," Kirill said, her voice softer now. "But it's worth the effort." Alan found himself nodding. He was still skeptical. Humans weren't known for their patience, but there was something compelling about the Eshnoran approach. "All right," he said. "Let's say I buy into this idea of understanding. Where do we start?" Kirill's lips curved again, just slightly. "We start with you learning more about us. And I learning more about you." Alan smiled. "Fair enough. So, what's the first thing you want to know about humans?" Kirill tilted her head, her quills shifting slightly. "Why do you smile so often?" The question caught Alan off guard, and he laughed. "It's just something we do. A way of showing we're happy, amused, or comfortable." Kirill watched him carefully. "And you laugh as well, even when there is no apparent humor. Is it a social signal?" Alan scratched his head. "I guess you could say that." Sometimes we laugh to break tension or to connect with others. It's not always about something funny. Kirill nodded slowly as if filing the information away. Interesting. I'll have to observe more of these smiles and laughs to understand their nuances. Alan grinned. You're welcome to study me all you want, but don't forget I'm observing you too. Kirill's quills shifted again and she turned away, her voice calm but with a faint undercurrent of amusement. Then it seems we'll both learn a great deal. Alan followed her out of the chamber, already feeling a slight shift in his perception of the Ashnorans. They weren't just a mysterious, enigmatic species, they were individuals with their own questions, doubts, and curiosities. And Kirill, in particular, intrigued him in a way he couldn't quite explain. Alan stretched his arms over his head as he stepped into the open-air market at the heart of Ashnora's bustling second level. The streets were alive with the hum of conversation and the soft chime of vendors displaying their wares. Stalls lined both sides of the thoroughfare, each one boasting an array of vibrant fruits, shimmering textiles, or delicate sculptures that looked as though they might evaporate in a stiff breeze. This was a far cry from the formal chambers where Alan had spent most of his time since arriving. He felt a pang of relief to be somewhere a bit more alive. Kirill appeared beside him, her flowing garments catching the soft light. She held a small notepad-like device, her quills swaying gently as she scanned the crowd. The second-level market is one of our oldest, she said. Many Ashnorans believe it's where our cultural heart still beats strongest. Alan nodded, then gestured to the rows of glowing fruit. What about that? Is it safe for humans? Quite safe, Kirill assured him. Most of our produce is biologically compatible with human physiology. Alan stepped closer, picking up one of the glowing spheres. What do you call these? Vrina, Kirill replied. They are sweet, with a flavor similar to what your species might describe as a mix between citrus and honey. Before Alan could respond, a voice called out behind them. Lieutenant. Kirill. Turning, Alan saw Dr. Ben Marquez hurrying through the crowd, a slightly exasperated expression on his face. Ben, one of the few other humans stationed on Ashnora, served as the mission's head biologist. His thick, dark hair was always just a bit unkempt, and today was no exception. Alan, you were supposed to meet me in the research center an hour ago, Ben said, slightly out of breath. Then he looked at Kirill. Ah, and you must be the infamous liaison. Kirill inclined her head, her expression calm. I am Kirill. I assume you are Dr. Marquez. Ben gave a small wave. Please call me Ben. He turned back to Alan, eyebrows raised. So, what's the plan here? Are we just browsing the market now? Alan shrugged. Kirill was showing me around, and I thought I'd learn a bit more about Ashnoran culture. This seemed like a good place to start. Ben sighed. Fine. But next time, let me know, yeah? I've been up to my neck in soil samples all morning. Kirill's quills shifted slightly. I believe Dr. Marquez is frustrated with you, Lieutenant. Alan chuckled. Ben's always frustrated. It's how he shows he cares. Ben gave a mock glare. Very funny. Come on then. If we're going to play tourist, I want to see this cultural heart you've been talking about. Kirill led the way through the market, explaining the significance of various items and occasionally pausing to answer questions from local vendors. Alan noticed how easily she navigated the crowd, her movements fluid and purposeful. Ben, meanwhile, kept peppering her with questions about the biochemical properties of Ashnoran plants and whether they could be cultivated on Earth. Eventually, they came to a wide plaza where a group of Ashnorans performed a slow, rhythmic dance. Kirill stopped and gestured to the dancers. This is a traditional form of storytelling through movement. Each gesture represents a part of a narrative, an ancient tale of migration and renewal. Alan watched as the dancers moved in near-perfect unison, their elongated limbs creating intricate patterns in the air. It's beautiful, he said. Ben nodded reluctantly. I'll admit, that's impressive. How do they remember all those movements? Kirill glanced at him. It is passed down through generations. Each dancer learns from their mentor, and the story is preserved not through written records, but through practice and memory. Alan turned to her. What's the story they're telling now? Kirill's quills swayed lightly as she considered. It's the tale of the first Ashnorans who settled on this continent. They traveled through the harshest of conditions, relying on their unity and understanding to survive. The dance represents their journey, the struggles they faced, the bonds they formed, and their eventual arrival at a place they could call home. Ben folded his arms. Fascinating. And here I thought I'd just be analyzing soil all day. Alan smirked. Glad you decided to tag along? Ben rolled his eyes. Don't get used to it. As the dance concluded, the crowd applauded softly and the performers bowed. Alan turned to Kirill. So, what's next on the cultural tour? Kirill tilted her head. There is a small gallery nearby that showcases early Eshnoran carvings. You might find it interesting. Lead the way, Alan said, and they continued through the market. Ben fell in step beside Alan, his voice dropping slightly. She's something, isn't she? Alan raised an eyebrow. Who, Kirill? Yeah, Ben said. I've met a lot of alien representatives and most of them just give you the rehearsed lines. She actually seems invested. Alan glanced at Kirill, who was now speaking with a vendor about a set of carved stone figures. She is, he said. She takes her job seriously. Ben nudged him lightly. That's not all you're thinking, is it? Alan sighed. She's intriguing. I don't know. It's not like that. Ben raised an eyebrow. Sure it's not. Alan shot him a look, but Ben just grinned and kept walking. The gallery turned out to be a small, circular room lined with shelves of intricately carved stones. Each one depicted a scene from Eshnoran history, hunters stalking crystalline creatures, engineers constructing their first great spires, families gathering around glowing hearths. Kirill explained each piece, her voice calm and measured. This carving, she said, gesturing to a particularly detailed piece, shows the moment our ancestors discovered how to harness the energy of the crystals. It was a turning point in our history, allowing us to build the cities you see today. Alan leaned in for a closer look. Amazing detail. How long would something like this take? Years, Kirill said. The artists who created these were revered not only for their skill, but for their patience. Every line, every curve had to be perfect. Ben whistled softly. Now that's dedication. Makes me feel bad for complaining about my lab work. Alan chuckled. You complain about everything. That's not true, Ben said, mock indignant. I didn't complain about the market. I only complained about you ditching me. Kirill looked between them, her quills shifting slightly. Your interactions are curious. You seem to express frustration through humor. Ben grinned. Yeah, that's how friends work. Friends, Kirill repeated as though testing the word. It's an interesting concept. Eshnorans have deep communal bonds, but the term friend doesn't quite translate the same way. Alan leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. How would you describe it? Kirill thought for a moment. Our connections are more fluid. We don't have rigid categories like friend or colleague. Relationships shift and evolve based on mutual need and understanding. Ben nodded. I guess that makes sense. Humans like to label everything. Kirill smiled faintly. Labels can help you understand the world. They can also limit you. Alan tilted his head. You know, you're pretty good at making me think differently about things. Kirill's quills swayed gently. That's the purpose of understanding, is it not? Alan exchanged a glance with Ben, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. They both knew this wasn't going to be just another mission. Eshnora was proving to be more than a new assignment. It was a place where their perspectives might just change for the better. Alan leaned on the railing of the high terrace, looking down at the sprawling city of Eshnora. The crystalline buildings glowed faintly even in the pale light of early morning. From this height, it was impossible not to admire the intricate layout of the streets and the glimmering streams that wound through them. But Alan wasn't alone. Ben was beside him, finishing off the last of a strange, glowing fruit that had become a local favorite of his. I'm telling you, man, the fruit's good, but I still can't figure out how it's glowing, Ben said, tossing the pit into a nearby receptacle. It's not bioluminescent, not exactly. The chemanalysis came back inconclusive. Alan smirked. You're supposed to be the expert, Ben. Expert? Sure. Miracle worker? Not quite. Ben scratched his head. I've run 3 tests on it. Every time, the spectrometer spits out numbers that don't make sense. Like the thing's got properties we can't measure properly. I keep thinking maybe the instruments are out of calibration. But then I test something else and it comes back fine. Alan shrugged. Maybe you're just out of your depth. Maybe you're just jealous you didn't figure it out first. Ben shot back with a grin. Kirill's voice interrupted their banter. You two seem to enjoy challenging each other. Alan and Ben both turned. Kirill had arrived quietly, her usual serene demeanor intact. She approached the railing and looked out over the city, her quills shifting slightly in the breeze. Just a little friendly competition, Alan said. Ben likes to think he's smarter than me, but I'm just here to keep him humble. Ah, Kirill said, her tone neutral. So your teasing is a form of bonding? Something like that, Ben said, crossing his arms. Alan's like a big brother. Annoying, but I guess he means well. Alan rolled his eyes. I'll take that as a compliment. Kirill tilted her head, her eyes moving between them. You humans have a strange way of showing affection. Strange to you, maybe, Alan said. But it works for us. Kirill considered this for a moment, then turned her attention back to the city. I wanted to show you both something. There's a place not far from here, an old gathering site. It's not part of the regular cultural tours, but I think you'll find it interesting. What kind of gathering site? Ben asked. Kirill's quills twitched slightly. It's difficult to describe. Perhaps it's best if you see it for yourselves. Alan exchanged a glance with Ben, who shrugged. Sure, Alan said. Lead the way. The three of them set off down a narrow, winding path that led away from the main city streets. As they walked, Kirill explained the history of the area. This site was once a meeting place for early Ashnorans, long before the cities were built. It was here that they made decisions about migration, resource sharing, and how to handle disputes. Sounds like a proto-government, Ben said. In a sense, Kirill replied. But it was less hierarchical than the governments you're familiar with. The emphasis was on consensus and mutual understanding. Alan frowned. That must have been slow going. Humans don't usually have the patience for that kind of thing. Kirill glanced at him. Perhaps that is one of your species' challenges. An impatience that can lead to both innovation and conflict. Fair point, Alan admitted. We're not exactly known for taking our time to talk things through. Ben smirked. Understatement of the year. As they walked further, the city's crystalline structures gave way to smoother, more natural formations. The path widened into a broad clearing surrounded by tall, gently glowing trees. In the center of the clearing stood a low, circular structure made of polished stone. It was simple, unadorned, but it radiated an air of significance. This is it, Kirill said, gesturing to the structure. Our ancestors gathered here to share knowledge and resolve differences. It is said that many of the traditions we follow today were first discussed on this very ground. Alan approached the structure, running his hand over the smooth stone. It's understated. It was never meant to be grand, Kirill said. Its value lies in what happened here, not in how it looks. Ben crouched down, examining the base of the structure. I'm guessing the glowing trees came later? Kirill nodded. Yes. The trees were planted many generations after the original gatherings. They're a symbol of the enduring conversations that took place here. Alan straightened up. So why bring us here? What's the significance now? Kirill's quills shifted slightly. I thought it might help you understand us better. This is a place where our ancestors set aside their differences and worked together. Perhaps it can serve as an example for your own interactions here. Ben looked up from his crouch. You think we need a reminder to play nice? I think you might benefit from seeing a different way of resolving conflicts, Kirill said calmly. It is not my place to tell you what to do, but sometimes a new perspective can be valuable. Alan folded his arms. Fair enough. But I think you'll find humans aren't as stubborn as you might think. Kirill turned her dark eyes on him. I do not think you are stubborn. I think you are determined. Alan blinked, surprised by the comment. Determined, huh? I'll take that. Ben straightened up, brushing dirt off his hands. Well, this is nice and all, but I've still got that glowing fruit puzzle to solve. Always thinking about the science, Alan. Nest to listen, these are the principles that guided our ancestors here. Alan glanced around the clearing one last time. It's a peaceful spot. I can see why it mattered to them. Ben nodded. Yeah, it's got a certain calm to it. Almost makes you forget how weird this fruit is. Kirill's lips curved slightly. If you would like, I can arrange for you to speak with one of our botanists about the fruit's properties. Ben brightened. Now that I'd like. Maybe they can help me figure out what my instruments are missing. I will make the arrangements, Kirill said. And I hope this visit has been worthwhile. Alan gave her a small smile. It has. Thanks for showing us something off the usual path. Kirill inclined her head. You're welcome. I thought you might appreciate seeing a place that helped shape who we are. As they began the walk back toward the city, Alan found himself glancing at Kirill more than once. She moved with the same quiet grace as always, but something about the way she had spoken, about understanding, about patience, stuck with him. For all the differences between their species, there was a strange, almost magnetic pull to her perspective. And as much as he might joke with Ben, Alan couldn't help but feel that he was learning something about himself here on Eshnora, something that had been hidden under the layers of human bluster and bravado. Ben, of course, didn't notice the shift. He was already listing the questions he'd asked the botanist, his voice buzzing with enthusiasm. Alan listened with half an ear, his mind drifting back to the clearing and the quiet strength of the place. It wasn't about being a beacon or a testament to anything. It was just there. A reminder that progress didn't always have to come at breakneck speed. As they stepped back into the main streets of Eshnora, Alan glanced at Kirill one last time. She met his eyes and tilted her head slightly, a silent acknowledgement of what they had shared. Alan didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time he felt that maybe he didn't have to have all the answers right away. Sometimes it was enough to just keep walking forward. Ben's voice carried over the quiet hum of machinery in the research center. "Okay, Alan, I need you to hold still for a second." Alan, sitting awkwardly on a raised platform, shifted. "Define hold still, because I feel like I've been frozen for ages." 5 minutes, Ben said without looking up from his console. "I've been scanning the composition of your suit's outer layer. There's something weird going on, and I want to see if it's reacting to the environment." "You could have just told me that before dragging me here," Alan grumbled. "I thought we were supposed to be going to that cultural exchange thing today." "We'll get there," Ben said. "Kirill's going to meet us outside. She's probably already waiting, but trust me, this will only take another." The door slid open and Kirill stepped in, her quills swaying slightly. "You've been in here for quite some time." "See?" Alan said, pointing at her without moving too much. "Even Kirill thinks this is taking forever." Ben rolled his eyes. "She's not complaining. She's just making an observation." Kirill looked between them, her head tilted. "Is this how humans usually interact in a professional setting? With such banter?" "Pretty much," Alan said with a smirk. "It keeps things interesting." "Interesting isn't the word I'd use," Ben muttered, but his tone held no real annoyance. Kirill approached the platform. "Is this experiment truly necessary?" "It's not an experiment. It's a diagnostic," Ben corrected her. "And yes, it is." The suit's fabric was reacting strangely to the Eshnoran atmosphere the last time we were outside. "I'm just making sure it's stable before we go traipsing around again." "And that requires Alan to sit perfectly still?" Kirill asked, her voice calm but curious. Ben shrugged. "If you want accurate readings, yes." Alan groaned. "Can we just get this over with?" "Almost done," Ben said, checking the console again. After another moment, he sighed and leaned back. "All right, you're good to move. No structural anomalies." Finally, Alan said, standing up and stretching. "Let's get out of here before Ben finds another diagnostic to run." Ben gathered his equipment, rolling his eyes again. "You say that like I'm looking for an excuse to keep you here." "You are," Alan said with a grin. "But it's fine. I forgive you." Kirill's gaze followed them as they left the lab. "You speak of forgiveness often. Is it so common for humans to wrong each other?" Alan glanced at her. "It's not about doing something bad. It's more a way of saying, hey, no hard feelings." Ben chuckled. In other words, it's another one of Alan's jokes. Kirill's quills shifted slightly, a sign Alan had come to recognize as thoughtful curiosity. "Your humor is complex. It often seems to hide something else beneath the surface." Alan didn't respond right away. As they made their way outside, the crisp air hit them and the city stretched out before them in its usual shimmering beauty. He looked over at Kirill, noting the way her eyes scanned the landscape. It was clear she wasn't just sightseeing, she was constantly observing, analyzing, trying to understand the human perspective. "You're not wrong," Alan said finally. "Sometimes humor is a shield. Other times it's a way to connect. With Ben, it's just how we talk." Kirill nodded slowly, as though filing the information away for later consideration. "I see." The three of them moved through the city's second-level streets, heading toward the designated cultural exchange site. Vendors called out in melodic tones, offering glowing produce and delicately woven garments. A group of children ran by, their laughter echoing through the crystalline corridors. Alan found himself relaxing a bit, letting the vibrant energy of Eshnora seep into his mood. Ben stopped at a stall selling small, intricately carved trinkets. He picked up a smooth, glowing orb and turned it over in his hands. "What's this?" "Stellar resin," Kirill said, stepping closer. "It's harvested from certain trees that grow only in our northern regions. When treated and polished, it glows faintly and retains the heat of the sun." Ben handed it to Alan. "Here, feel this." Alan took the orb, surprised by its warmth. "Feels alive." "It's not alive, but its energy resonates with the environment," Kirill explained. "It's often given as a gift to symbolize warmth and vitality." "Nice sentiment," Alan said, setting it back on the vendor's counter. As they continued walking, Kirill led them down a side path that opened into a wide, open-air atrium. Rows of benches encircled a raised platform where a small group of Eshnorans stood, preparing instruments that looked both familiar and alien. Strings of glowing lights hung above, casting a soft, golden glow over the area. "This is the cultural exchange," Kirill said, gesturing to the platform. "Artists and performers from different regions of Eshnora gather here to share their traditions. You will have the opportunity to experience Eshnoran music and storytelling." Alan took a seat near the front, Ben settling beside him. The performers began to play, their instruments producing a blend of melodic tones and harmonized hums. It was unlike any music Alan had ever heard, soft yet intricate with rhythms that seemed to shift and flow like water. "What do you think?" Kirill asked quietly, sitting on Alan's other side. "It's beautiful," Alan said. "Complex but calming." Ben nodded. "Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're saying, but it's definitely got a vibe." Kirill's lips curved slightly. "They are singing of the seasons and the way our world changes over time. The cycle of life and growth." Alan leaned back, letting the music wash over him. For a moment, he forgot about the pressures of being Earth's representative, about the endless political negotiations and cultural misunderstandings. In that space, surrounded by alien voices and glowing lights, he felt an odd sense of peace. The performance ended with a soft, harmonious chord, and the audience offered quiet, respectful applause. Alan looked over at Kirill, who was watching him closely. "You seemed moved by the music," she said. "It's different from anything I've heard before," Alan said. "In a good way. You can tell it means something to them." Kirill inclined her head. "Music often carries meaning that words cannot fully express. It is a universal language." Ben stretched his arms. "Okay, I'll admit that was impressive. I didn't understand a word, but I felt it. That's not easy to pull off." "Perhaps you are more open to new experiences than you realize," Kirill said, her tone lightly teasing. Ben laughed. "I'm open. I'm just also realistic." Alan smirked. Realistic is his code word for skeptical. Kirill's quills twitched slightly, and she regarded Ben with a thoughtful expression. Skepticism is not inherently negative. It can lead to questions, and questions often lead to understanding. "Well, look at that," Alan said, grinning at Ben. "You've got Kirill defending you now." Ben shrugged. "I'll take it. I've got a reputation to maintain." The three of them left the atrium together, the glow of the city once again surrounding them. Alan walked a bit slower, letting Kirill and Ben move ahead. He found himself glancing back at the stage, thinking about the music and the strange way it had made him feel. It wasn't just about the notes or the harmonies. It was about the connection it seemed to forge, however briefly, between two very different worlds. Kirill looked over her shoulder, catching his gaze. "Is something wrong, Lieutenant?" "No," Alan said quickly. "Just thinking." She waited a moment before nodding. Thoughts often reveal more than words. Perhaps this experience will stay with you longer than you expect. Alan wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he simply fell into step beside her, letting the quiet understanding between them speak for itself. Alan found himself back at the marketplace, only this time he was looking at something much larger than the usual stalls of glowing fruit and intricately carved trinkets. A group of Ashnoran artisans had gathered in a wide, open square to construct a massive, geometric sculpture. Its framework, made of translucent, crystal-like material, caught the sun and refracted the light into brilliant patterns that danced across the surrounding buildings. "Impressive, isn't it?" Ben asked, standing beside him with his arms crossed. Alan nodded. "It's something else." "What's it supposed to be?" "An old design," Kirill said from Alan's other side. "One that symbolizes unity through interconnectedness. Each piece is a fragment, but together they form a complete whole." Ben tilted his head. "Sounds philosophical. But why build it here?" "This square was once a gathering place for artisans," Kirill explained. "It's a way of honoring that tradition, of reminding us of our roots." Alan took a step closer, studying the way the light filtered through the sculpture's incomplete edges. "Looks like they've got a ways to go. Is it just the three of them working on it?" Kirill shook her head. "Many others have contributed to the base structure. The final stages are handled by the most skilled artisans." Ben let out a low whistle. "No pressure, huh?" Kirill's lips curved slightly. "Pressure, perhaps, but also great trust. They've earned their place here." As they watched, one of the artisans, a tall Ashnoran with silver-tipped quills, turned and gestured toward them. Kirill stepped forward, responding in the fluid, melodic tones of her native language. After a brief exchange, she turned back to Alan and Ben. "He says that if you're interested, you may try assembling one of the smaller segments." Ben blinked. "You mean, us? Helping build that thing?" Kirill inclined her head. If you are willing, of course. Alan glanced at Ben, then back at the sculpture. You up for it? Ben hesitated, then shrugged. Sure. Why not? Might be fun. Kirill led them to a nearby workbench where several triangular pieces of the crystal-like material lay waiting. Each fragment was smooth and cool to the touch, and Alan noticed that when he held one up to the light, it created a faint, shimmering halo. All right, Ben said, examining one of the pieces. So, how do we do this? Kirill picked up a fragment and ran her hand along its edge, showing them how it fit into a pre-assembled section. Each piece has a specific orientation, she explained. The artisans have already marked them, so you must align the etchings carefully before securing them in place. Alan squinted at the faint markings on his piece. These symbols here? Yes, Kirill confirmed. If you align them correctly, the structure will maintain its integrity. Ben snorted. Sounds easy enough. Let's give it a go. They spent the next hour carefully fitting the pieces together, following Kirill's guidance and occasionally muttering to themselves when a fragment didn't align perfectly. The process was surprisingly engaging. Alan found himself growing more focused, more attuned to the subtleties of the material and the way each piece interacted with the others. Hey, Ben said after a while, holding up his latest edition. This one's got some kind of weird marking. Is that normal? Kirill examined it and nodded. That is a decorative pattern added by one of the senior artisans. It indicates that this segment is part of the outermost layer. Decorative, huh? Ben said, sliding it into place. Looks more like a mistake to me. Kirill's quills shifted. What you perceive as a mistake is often an intentional choice. Alan chuckled. Careful, Ben. She's calling you out. Yeah, Ben muttered. At least I haven't broken anything yet. Alan lifted another piece and turned it slowly, watching how the light played off its surface. These things are kind of mesmerizing, he admitted. You don't really notice it until you're up close. That's part of the design, Kirill said. To draw you in, to make you focus on the details. Well, it's working, Alan said, sliding his piece into place. It's almost relaxing. Ben shot him a look. You're kidding, right? This is anything but relaxing. I feel like I'm defusing a bomb. Kirill's lips curved slightly. It can be challenging at first, but many find it meditative once they understand the rhythm. Ben muttered something under his breath but kept working. As the hours passed, the three of them fell into a steady rhythm, their banter punctuated by the occasional clink of crystal pieces and the faint hum of the artisans working nearby. Alan found himself glancing at Kirill from time to time, noticing the way her hands moved with precision and ease. She seemed almost content, a rare moment of visible emotion breaking through her usually calm exterior. You do this kind of thing a lot? Alan asked her. Not often, Kirill replied. But I enjoy it when I do. It reminds me of the collaborative efforts our ancestors valued. Alan nodded. There's something satisfying about it. Like you're part of something bigger. Ben snorted. Oh, now you're getting philosophical. Hey, it's true, Alan said with a grin. You don't have to be all science all the time, you know? Sure, Ben said, rolling his eyes. I'll leave the deep thoughts to you. Kirill glanced between them. You balance each other well. Is that a compliment? Ben asked. An observation, Kirill said simply. Alan laughed. I'll take it. By the time they finished their segment, the sun was dipping lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the square. The lead artisan approached and examined their work, nodding approvingly before speaking to Kirill. You did well, she translated. He says your contributions are appreciated. Ben gave a mock bow. Thank you. I'll be here all week. Alan shook his head. Don't let it go to your head. Kirill's quills shifted slightly, a sign Alan had come to recognize as amusement. You have earned a moment of pride. It is not every day that visitors from another world help construct a symbol of our culture. Alan looked back at the now completed segment, a faint glow emanating from its edges. It feels good to be part of something meaningful. Ben clapped him on the shoulder. Don't get too sentimental, buddy. We still have a cultural tour tomorrow. Alan smirked. And you'll still find a way to complain about it. Kirill's voice was calm but carried a hint of warmth. Perhaps you will find more to appreciate along the way. Alan looked at her, meeting her dark, steady gaze. Maybe I already have. Ben groaned. Oh, here we go. Alan laughed, shaking his head as they made their way back through the square, the glow of the sculpture now a gentle presence behind them. As they walked, Alan couldn't help but feel a small sense of accomplishment, not just for what they had built, but for the quiet, unexpected connection that was starting to form between him and this strange, fascinating world. Alan and Ben stood at the edge of the crystalline overlook, taking in the view of Eshnora's sprawling cityscape. Below them, the streets glowed softly, as if lit by some internal energy. The air had a faint, sweet aroma like fruit left out in the sun. Alan leaned on the railing, scanning the streets and buildings for anything familiar. Even after weeks on Eshnora, the city still felt as alien as the day he'd arrived. Ben stepped closer, biting into another piece of that glowing fruit he'd grown so fond of. You'd think by now I'd be tired of this view, but it's still impressive. Alan nodded. It's definitely not Earth. It's hard to wrap my head around it sometimes. The buildings look like they should melt in the sun, but they're solid as steel. I don't even know what this railing is made of. Ben grinned. We could always ask Kirill. She's got answers for everything. Speak of the devil. Kirill appeared behind them, walking at a brisk, deliberate pace. Her quills swayed slightly as she approached, her expression as calm and steady as ever. You wanted to see me? Yeah, Alan said, straightening up. Ben and I were talking, and we figured we should run something by you. There's this thing we've been hearing about. A place near the edge of the city. It's supposed to be some kind of ancient site, but no one really talks about it. Kirill tilted her head, her dark eyes narrowing. You are referring to the Eshker ruins? Ben snapped his fingers. That's the one, Eshker. So what's the deal? Forbidden temple? Alien ghosts? Something else spooky? Kirill didn't answer right away. She looked past them, toward the horizon where the city's glow faded into rolling hills and distant mountains. The ruins are not forbidden, but they are seldom visited. It is said that those who go there often return with a different perspective. Alan raised an eyebrow. Different how? Some find clarity, Kirill replied. Others find questions they had not considered before. The Eshker ruins are a place of reflection. Ben scoffed lightly. Sounds like the kind of thing tour guides say when they don't have a real answer. Kirill's quills shifted slightly. Alan recognized it as her version of a frown. The ruins are not a tourist attraction. They are a part of our history, a place that holds meaning for those willing to seek it. Alan glanced at Ben, then back to Kirill. Standing in unexpected places, Kirill said simply, If this is what you wish, I will guide you. Alan smiled. Sounds like a plan. The path to the Eshker ruins was long and winding, taking them away from the smooth, glowing streets of the city and into a landscape that felt untouched by time. The terrain grew rugged, the air cooler. Alan felt the crunch of unfamiliar soil under his boots as they climbed a gentle incline. So, Kirill, Ben began, what's the story with these ruins? Why were they built out here instead of closer to the city? They predate the city by many generations, Kirill explained. Our ancestors built them as a sanctuary, a place to contemplate their place in the world. Alan glanced at her. Contemplate what exactly? Life, she said simply. Purpose. Connection. The things that bind us to one another and to our world. Ben made a face. Sounds like a fancy way of saying a spot to sit and think. Kirill didn't react, but her voice was calm. Sometimes the simplest places are the most profound. Alan gave Ben a light shove. You asked, man. Don't start complaining now. Just saying, Ben muttered, but he kept walking. When they reached the ruins, Alan was struck by how different they looked from anything in the city. The structures were low and sprawling, made of smooth stone rather than crystalline material. They didn't glow or shimmer. Instead, they absorbed the sunlight, giving off a faint warmth. The design was intricate, with carved patterns that spiraled and looped, each one seeming to tell a story. Here it is, Kirill said, stepping aside so they could take it in. Alan walked closer, his eyes tracing the carvings. What do these patterns mean? They are narratives, Kirill replied. Stories of our ancestors' journeys, their challenges, their discoveries. Each line represents a piece of their experience. Ben crouched near a particularly detailed carving. It's like a history book in pictures. Kind of reminds me of those old earth cave paintings, but way more advanced. Alan nodded. Except this isn't hidden in a cave. It's out in the open for everyone to see. Kirill folded her hands in front of her. Our ancestors believed that history should be shared. That knowledge must not be hidden. They spent the next hour exploring the site, with Kirill explaining the significance of various carvings and structures. Ben asked a lot of questions, some serious, some more sarcastic, but Alan could tell he was interested. He himself found it hard to look away from the stories etched into the stone. They weren't just depictions of events, they seemed to hold emotion, intention, meaning that went beyond words. At one point, Ben sat down on a wide, flat stone and stared at the largest carving. Okay, I'll admit, this is kind of amazing. It's not what I expected. Alan smirked. What were you expecting? An alien theme park? Not that, Ben said. But I didn't think it'd be this. I don't know. Honest. It feels real. Kirill looked at him, her expression thoughtful. Perhaps that is what the ruins offer, an opportunity to see things as they truly are. Alan sat down beside Ben, letting the quiet settle over them. He didn't feel the need to say much. The ruins seemed to speak for themselves, their stories unfolding in silence. For the first time since arriving on Eshnora, Alan felt a deep sense of connection, not just to the planet but to the people who had built it, who had walked these paths long before he ever set foot here. Kirill stood a few feet away, her quills catching the light. It is said that everyone who visits the Eshker ruins leaves with a new understanding. I wonder what you will take from this place. Ben glanced at her. What about you? What do you take from it? Kirill didn't answer right away. She looked out at the horizon, her gaze distant. It reminds me of what we must remember as we move forward. The paths we have walked, the choices we have made. It is not a single lesson but many. Alan met her gaze. That's a good answer. She gave a small nod. It is not my answer alone. It is what these ruins have taught countless generations. The three of them sat quietly for a while longer, the ruins standing silent and steady around them. The sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows that stretched across the carvings. Alan felt a strange sense of calm, as though he were a part of something larger, something that didn't require words or explanations. It just was. When they finally rose to leave, Alan looked back at the ruins one last time. He didn't know exactly what he'd gained from the experience, but he knew it would stay with him. Eshnora had a way of doing that, of showing him things he didn't know he needed to see. And as he walked away from the Eshker ruins, flanked by Ben and Kirill, he found himself wondering what other unexpected lessons this world had in store.